Eric, this is something that Uber successfully lobbied against several years ago. This time, despite its best efforts, it didn't happen. How much of a setback is this?
Right. In 2015, a far less ubiquitous Uber, beat down Mayor Bill de Blasio and scared the government from regulating it, allowing it to continue to grow. This is, now it's well established, has a large number of drivers, but it's definitely a blow for Uber to set a cap rather than to grow and shrink with the amount of demand. So it's a major setback for Uber.
And in terms of the response here, not just from the company itself, but more importantly, perhaps from other cities, including places like London, which is also trying to figure out how to best contend with Uber and its MO of breaking down the walls and then apologizing or seeking forgiveness later on. How likely is it that other cities will follow New York's lead?
Well, I think it'll be an interesting experiment. I'm sure, plenty of other cities will watch what happens in New York. This is a 1-year lock-in, so we'll be able to see what happens here, and then other cities will certainly, learn and make a decision for themselves, see what impact it has on traffic and wages and everything else.
Eric, does Uber need more vehicles in New York City? I mean, just anecdotally, Scarlett and I talked about this on air earlier. There are a lot of Ubers in New York, right? Do we have any information from Uber itself on the supply-demand balance, and what is their argument that they do need more cars?
I mean, Uber's line would just be that it's self-correcting, and that if there are larger problems about traffic, better ways to fix them involve things that target the congestion themselves, zoning areas and taxing all cars there, but allowing the marketplace on Uber to set the number of drivers who think they can make enough money, drive, and that sets the number. So I think they would prefer levers that allow the marketplace to respond to costs that try to reduce traffic without setting a hard cap that they can't react.
Here in New York, though, it's about so much more than just traffic. I mean, there's a human cost to all of this. There are 6 driver suicides in recent months as a way for drivers to protest that they weren't making living wages. These are taxi drivers who lost business after the advent of all these car-hailing apps.
Yeah, and you wonder, is this too little, too late? You talk about, Eric, what happened in New York in 2015. In New York, we've gone up to about, 100,000 Uber drivers on the street, up from what it was, about 60,000 just a few years ago.
Right. I think the challenge here is, on the one hand, if you restrict the labor market, generally that means better jobs for those people who have the positions, making them more lucrative. But if you expand the number of people who can drive, obviously that's more jobs, probably each one of them making less money. So I think there's just this question, that society's asked, and New York, I guess, has answered today about setting priorities around whether they want to make the job sustainable for the workers who have it, or making a minimum job available to as wide a number of people as possible.
Again, I just want to know if we've gotten any transparency from Uber on the effect of this. Not just from the cap on vehicles, but also the ability of the New York Taxi and Limousine Commission to set a minimum wage. Do we know if this is going to cut into Uber's margins at all? Is it going to increase costs? Have they given any detail? They're a private company, they don't have to, but have they given any detail on any of this?
My sense is that Uber, at the end of the day, had supported the minimum pay. I think how that plays out, whether that actually translates to more pay, is hard to say. One of the things with Uber is there's so many different profiles of driver. There's this full-time driver who's working in very strange hours. There's one who's working shorter hours. So, it's plausible that certain groups of drivers certainly could benefit from a minimum pay, and others might not. But I think a lot of it, we're just going to have to see this play out and look at the data. As much as Uber provides and the city's able to inhale about the effect of a minimum wage protection for these drivers.